Hi, my name is Mandy, and I'm a reference librarian here at Haverford Township Free Library. Today I'm going to review a couple of books for you that I read and liked, which coincidentally both take their subject matter from the field of mental health in the United States of America. The Woman They Could Not Silence by Kate Moore took place in the 1800s and is about the nature and legislation of involuntary admission to a mental facility as a means of control between husbands and wives. Hidden Valley Road, Inside the Mind of an American Family by Robert Kolker is the second book, and while it is also about understanding the nature of mental health, it addresses the evolution of the study of schizophrenia in this country, as witnessed in the devastation wrought by the condition on one family, the Galvins, who lived in Colorado in the 1960s and 1970s. The Woman They Could Not Silence is by the best-selling author of Radium Girls, Kate Moore. It was released on June 22nd of this year and is available as an audiobook and an ebook through Libby by Overdrive, an ebook by Hoopla, and is a physical book through the Delaware County Library System. It was reviewed by NPR on June 23rd. I chose this book because I have a passion for women's rights, and I found the story of Elizabeth Packard and her struggle for freedom in a society where married women became merely a shadow of their husbands, without rights of their own, to be admirable and interesting. Not to mention engaging, as the author follows her with literary prose through her time in the asylum and into the fight beyond, to prove herself sane and reclaim her children from an abusive husband. Kate Moore begins this biography by stating that this is not a book about mental health, but about how it can be used as a weapon. This book is about power, who wields it, who owns it, and the methods they use. Above all, it is about fighting back. On June 18, 1860, Elizabeth Packard was committed to Jacksonville Insane Asylum in Jacksonville, Illinois, by her husband Theophilus. He was a pastor who for quite a long time had found her increasingly independent thoughts, greater pressure for freedoms they had no wish to give her, and swiftly diverging religious beliefs to be a sign of insanity. For isn't it obvious that a woman who breaks from her husband in thought and action must therefore be insane? On this basis, he committed her, and without the benefits of a trial or proper recourse, she stayed in the asylum for 3 years. This book spends about half of the time in her experiences in the asylum, showing what she lived through, her friendships with the other women who had been wrongly committed, and her power struggle with the director of the asylum, Andrew McFarland, who felt that her dislike of her husband and her unique strength of faith maintained throughout her years of imprisonment were definite signs of insanity. Despite the people who wrote to him on her behalf, and Elizabeth herself, who claimed throughout that she was sane and should not be confined, eventually the doctor deemed her case an hopeless derangement and released her. The latter half of the book addresses Elizabeth's rise as an activist, first in advocating for her own trial to be declared sane so that she could be trusted by society in her furthering her wider-reaching activist goals of changing the laws so that women had to be put through a trial to determine sanity, no matter who their husbands were, before being declared insane, that a married woman could maintain her own income apart from her husband and sue for custody of her children in times of abuse. Elizabeth was an intelligent woman of profound faith who used her position, bolstered by the support of friends and family, to change the view as well as the rights of married women permanently. No small feat, given her gender and the years in which the story took place. I enjoyed this book and left it with a great admiration of Elizabeth Packard. This would be an excellent book for anyone who is interested in women's rights, the experience of being a woman in an asylum, or even that of being a woman in the 1800s in this country. It brings to life an interesting, nuanced character who used her privilege to give voice to those whom society gave none. The second book that I would like to review for you today is Hidden Valley Road by Robert Kolker. This book is available through the library as a single book to request or as a book club in a bag to read with your book club. It is also available through Libby as an audiobook and an ebook. It was reviewed in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and NPR. The narrative nonfiction structure of the book states that, quote unquote, the dozen children of the Galvin family perfectly spanned the baby boom. Donald was born in 1945, Mary in 1965. 6 of the Galvin boys took ill at a time when so little was understood about schizophrenia, that the search for explanation overshadowed everything about their lives. They lived through the eras of institution and shock therapy, the debates between psychotherapy versus medicine, the needle in a haystack search for genetic markers of the disease, and the profound disagreements about the cause and origin of the illness itself, whether it was in fact nature or nurture that caused the problems in the minds of the afflicted. In the 1800s and 1900s, well, really until the Galvin family was affected by the disease, and even beyond, the nature of schizophrenia was not well understood. Theories and treatments abounded, debates raged for decades, but with so many different kinds of people being affected, it was impossible to determine whether a genetic component did or did not play a part in the disease. It wasn't until a large control group came along, wherein some of the family members had the disease and some didn't, that schizophrenia could really properly be studied. It wasn't until the 1970s, when 6 of the 12 children of Mimi and Donald Galvin were diagnosed, that such a control group presented itself. This book is a good quality, interesting narrative nonfiction. It begins with the story of Donald and Mimi, how they dated and married and met. There are flashbacks as well to happier times as the story progresses through the journey that each of the 6 boys takes into the realm of schizophrenia, their treatments and their fates, even up to today. This book also does a good job illustrating what it was like to grow up in a family with them, as Mary and Margaret did, and how they were profoundly affected as well, even though they were not in and of themselves diagnosed with the disease. Though the chapters jump around a bit in time, beginning with Don Jr. and Mary in 1972, before jumping back to describe what Don Sr. was like in 1948, each highlights the life experiences of different specific members of the family. It is predominantly divided into parts that each address a portion of their history. From the past to the present, this book describes the destruction of the family and how they were studied by scientists, though not really aided by them, as the children, one by one, ran off, self-destructed, or succumbed to their mental illness. Though the ending does have a bit of hope, though also resentment and maybe a little resignation, but definitely hope. I find that mental health to be fascinating, and as such, I enjoyed this book. It was well researched and well put together and arranged. And I think that anyone who would like this book, who enjoys nonfiction, books about neuroscience, or books about the history of mental health in this country. Thank you for joining me here today at our staff picks. I hope that you enjoyed my book reviews, and thank you very much, and you have a great day.